Okay, then, episode 51. You know, I've said this before, but we should have been rolling on the last 15 minutes of our conversation that we had before we started rolling. But anyway, jokingly, before I hit record, you said, okay, now let's talk about rest. After we just absolutely had a session of just throwing out frustrations and angers about all kinds of things. Not bad stuff, just, the stuff that causes people these days to just throw up their hands a little bit and not feel restful.
Yeah.
And so I've had this topic down for a long time, and you have too. And it seems like for some reason something else comes up and it gets pushed off to another time. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of times we talk about stuff that affects us personally. Yeah. And a lot of times I want to hear what people want to weigh in on or to talk about or to have us kick around. Not that we have any massive answer. You do, because you are Pastor Mike Tatlock, where you are a leader that people look to for discernment and logical discussion and inspiration. And that's what a pastor is supposed to do. So a lot of times I like to set you up to get your perspective on different topics. So I was excited and have been excited in this topic and of rest. Mm-hmm. And I went back and looked at some things that I'll bring up, and we'll probably set this up more from a biblical standpoint than we normally do with some topics. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we dive way into Scripture. I mean, our last episode, which was, I think, episode 50, it was talking about your trip to Africa. If you haven't heard that, make sure you listen to that episode because I think it's great. We didn't really go into a whole lot of Scripture. Mm-hmm. Some we do. This one is a topic that I think for me personally and for those around me and for friends, and a lot of times I think I have a pretty good gauge. I always try to read a room or read a culture or read a friend group or read the many guys that I communicate with. And right now, coming off of a time, as I think you referenced perhaps in our last episode, talking about big discussions and even a crisis and riots on race, to then this whole COVID thing and the aftermath of that, and then looking ahead at a time of an election coming, which is going to be, I don't even know what that's going to bring, but people are right to be like, not something else, not another disturbance or disruption, which is going to cause even a more absence of peace in my life or peace and rest in my life. So as we've mentioned before, I think that a lot of topics that we discuss now, a lot of things that men go through now are things that men have always gone through. Mm-hmm. Now, they're more interesting to us these days because it's our lives. But I was surprised in this topic of rest, or this idea of rest, how much it's mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah.
Which shows me that we aren't any real different now than the way they were then. Yeah. And I would have to think for you as a pastor, you probably get a lot of questions and have a lot of conversations from men in crisis or men in disruption or men in an uneasy state of life, in asking you, how do I better come to a place of rest? True?
Yeah. Nonstop. I mean, you ask anybody right now, and I would say everybody is feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, tired, fatigued, worn out, hopeless. You know, all the words we use to describe the opposite of a place of rest. What does it mean to be in a place of rest? How do I find rest? How do I find peace and rest? I think it's what is on the order, that when people are saying, I don't know how to find it. Like, is it a cultural issue? Is it a personal issue, spiritual issue? What is it? I'm like, well, it's all the above. It's all of those things contribute to. I mean, if you think about it, we are living in one of the most clinically anxious times.
Yeah.
Where anxiety, and if you want to add to that, depression, is something that is defining generations right now. And what does that look like? When you don't have rest, you then turn to coping mechanisms and anything to numb or anything to help me manage the hecticness of my life because I'm not finding rest. Or you look to escapism. And there's a difference between rest and escapism. And I think we're substituting, a lot of people are trying to
absolutely
fill the rest in their heart with escapism, and it's not the same thing.
Yeah, I'm going to go home and rest, and I'm going to have 8 beers and watch a little porn.
Yeah.
That's a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly it. It's like you're looking for rest, and with that, I would say peaceful rest, recharging, refreshing kind of rest. Because I think you can limit you can take a day off, and you're still not resting. You know, there's a rest that goes beyond just the absence of work. Although that's a form of rest. But I think people are looking for rest in their soul. They're looking for rest in their mind. How do you put your head in the pillow at night and my brain can't turn off? And it's going and it's going and it's going and I'm not getting any sleep. I'm not getting any physical rest because you're not getting any mental rest. It's all connected.
That's, you just described. I mean, that's my battle. I always have battled in terms of rest. And even back when I was doing Blazers TV and I was traveling the country with them and during the season, and I never slept well. I still don't really, but on the road, and I remember the team doctor who was would come on some road trips, and he was fantastic, and we weren't players, so I did never expect to get any kind of service from a team doctor, but I knew him well enough to where he'd come over once in a while and do a check-in. How you doing? Good. How's anything going on? And this is like before a game, you know, before we'd go on the air. And he'd always say, how you sleeping? And I'd say, not very good. I mean, I'm okay. I don't sleep on planes, which is amazing. I just never have been able to. And we'd be coming home from a 7-game road trip and have a game in Miami and fly all the way back to Portland against the jet stream. So a long flight when I should be everybody's asleep and I'm wide awake watching a movie. But anyway, well, you want to take something? And I never really did that. I've always had this fear of getting dependent on a sleep aid or something. Yeah. And not that I shouldn't, not that I shouldn't actually do that, but I just never have. But I've always wondered if it's just that lack of, and so then you try to work out to make yourself tired so you'll sleep better. And there are things you can do to do that. Thankfully, I never have tried to escape through different things. I haven't really had a problem with alcohol or drugs or whatever, like you talked about. Medication that can affect you emotionally. I've never, and if it has worked for some people, good for them. I just have never really wanted to do that. But I've always wondered on this topic of rest, why? And in fact, I was thinking as you were talking a second ago about when we had Myers Leonard on in episode, I think 49, he taught his escape was video games. And he would, just to get out of his own head and finish off, after a game or practice and the pressure of fans, which he was very sensitive about, and social media, well, he would go play video games. Well, then we all know, as you listen to the story, where that led him. Now, sometimes we know when we do try to numb up or things we just talked about, it can lead to really, really bad, it depends on what it is, alcoholism or infidelity, or in Myers' case, he slipped up and said a word, and it, in many ways, for a short time, destroyed him, but out of the ashes, he has now realizes and identifies. So we all go through those kinds of things. I guess what I'm saying about myself is, and the guys around me, is nobody seems at peace. And everybody's asking the question. And I've always been attracted to, as friends of mine are as well, or have being respectful of those people in your life who you feel like have a handle on rest and peace. I've always admired. Yeah. Even back in when I was in high school, I remember certain teachers who had this, and I don't want to say it was, I think a confidence and peace, there's a little mix, they get mixed up. I love the teachers around me. My dad was a teacher in my high school, which was unusual, but he was. But I remember friends of his who I always thought, gosh, I want to be like that guy. Why? because they had this level of confidence and this ease about them and this peace. So does that relate to rest? I guess it does. But in this day and age, which is different now and not really what we're talking about as far as the past goes, how do you achieve rest today? And I'll get into some biblical stuff, but I know I just talked in circles for about 5 minutes. But it all relates to the fact that I can't really identify what it is. And I have friends who are searching around. I like to think I'm pretty well self-aware, where I know I need it. I know friends of mine need it who don't have rest. And I'm not really sure how to achieve it.
I think, when the Bible talks about the anatomy of the human, we're created in the image of God, and you break down when Scripture talks about loving God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. The reason those 4 categories, it's who we are, makes up who we are. Our essence is our mind, our strength, our soul, and when you look at that, you go, okay, if I was to break down those 4 categories, heart, mind, soul, and strength, what does that mean to be at rest as a person as a whole? What I mean by that is that when you talk about rest, you have to talk about holistic rest, the rest of the wholeness of who I am. You can, like, for instance, when it says love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. Strength is the physical rest, right? There's nothing that feels better than a hard day at work that feels productive, that that felt like I accomplished something. That's great. There's a joy in that, right? But then that feeling of cracking a cold one, sitting down after a good, long, productive day, not a day where you're doing something you felt like you wasted your time. It's like a productive day. You feel good about it, and you're like, yes. And then or a work week where you've worked good, doing good things, and that Friday comes around, or that Saturday or Sunday, whatever your day off is. There's something about the rest physically, right? But we know, as important as it is, and we can talk about how to do that, you can have a day off, but then your heart's not at rest, your soul's not at rest, your mind's not at rest. So I think my first thought was, as we talk about rest, we got to think holistically of who I am as a being, as a person. So, for instance, my identity. Let's talk about identity, how I see myself. If my identity is in my job, I'm not going to rest, because whatever you find your identity in, it's going to pressure you to maintain that. So
causes more stress.
If my identity is in what people say of me, I'm going to work feverishly at how do I earn people's approval? How do I earn their favor? And so I'm constantly trying to please everybody. There's no rest in that, because every waking moment you're like, oh, if I do this, and if I actually got to do this for this person, I can do this for this person. And so you can see real quickly how, depending on where my identity is in, can contribute or be a symptom of restlessness, not restfulness. So I think, like that, as we talk about it, there's all these different layers to rest.
You mentioned accomplishing something, and it's funny because in my career, in my job, when I still do commercials and stuff, so there's a degree of TV, but when I was in that job, there were times when I would feel good or feel at rest, but yet it was so public, it was hard to find rest in that, in accomplishments. But now, in some of the many things I do, which some are half-baked, I don't really know what I am anymore professionally, but not I don't mean in a bad way. I just don't think there's a definition for it. But where I've gotten, like I'm kind of crafty a little bit in what I do and things I make and stuff.
Yeah,
I
really,
and sometimes
you still sell yourself short.
No, but sometimes I think I do that to accomplish something.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In the pursuit of rest.
Yeah.
So like this week, my son, who's a high schooler, had his, he has a car that's an 03. It's an older car. He loves it, but I'm okay. I've owned some classic rigs. I've done minor things to them, but I'm not a mechanic. So he calls me the other day, and he hesitated because he's had some issues with the car, and I've had to get him. But when you get a car with 160,000 miles, these things happen. And he's like, Dad, there's smoke coming out of my car. And I said, oh, geez, not again. Because it's just, And I don't want to spend, it's just so expensive. And to get into a shop now takes so long. And I do have people I could call, friends who who would help out if I asked. And I said, well, is it smoke or what's going on? He said, well, and then his friend with him said, no, it smells like coolant. And I went, okay, is your radiator overheating or is it boiling over? What's going on? He said, well, there's water on the ground. I said, pull over. Is your thermostat going up? Yeah, it's a little bit high. I said, well, if it gets to high, really high, you got to shut your car off. He said, yeah, there's stuff on the ground. I said, put your hand in it. Tell me what it smells like. Is it oil? No. It's kind of green. Okay, it's coolant. All right, you got a radiator issue. Sounds like. And then I'm going in my head, I hope it's not like a water pump. So anyway, he gets the car back to the house. And I hit the internet, of course, and I'm looking for all these symptoms, which I always do. Well, I get inside the car and I realize that about at this point for his car, the radiator seals start to crack. This is a long, sorry, this doesn't have some great ending. All I'm going to talk about is rest. But so I've ordered a radiator. And I called a mechanic that I know, but he, it would have been $1,000, $1,200 probably in that neighborhood because just everything is now. So I got a radiator for under $200. Watched a couple videos and I said, I'm doing this myself. So I did. So, I mean, look at my hands. Look how scraped, because I had to get into tight spaces. I have so many cuts on my hands. So I did. The other night I pulled it in the garage. I turned on some George Strait, had some neon lights on, brought his car in, I shut the door, and I replaced his radiator. And I think I did it right. I felt great.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell anybody I felt great, but I felt great. I accomplished something. Yeah. And I went in the house and I thought, for what I do right now at this point in my life, which I don't feel like I'm accomplishing much on a day-to-day basis, a little bit here and there, but not much. There's an absence of that for me. I love after we do these podcasts, I feel like we accomplished something.
Absolutely.
Regardless if one guy gets something from it or if 10 do.
Right.
And maybe none of them sometimes, but I feel an accomplishment there. But I do feel like in those little tasks and things that we take on, there is rest in that. We achieve rest in those things. Now, you and I have hunted together and have dropped elk on many occasions. And you take the photo at the end and you go inside and then we finally plop on the couch after it's been gutted and skinned and put into the cooler. Whew. Take that break and finally rest and feel like you feel like you accomplished something.
Oh, yeah.
So I think for a lot of people, and I think that's what drives guys.
Yes.
And when I've shared videos or photos of a hunting trip or whatever, guys, I want to do that. And they don't want to do that because they want to go kill an animal. Yes, they may want to fill the freezer.
Right.
But it just looks like something that is on the path to rest.
Yeah. Yes.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's where, okay, so let's get biblical. You go back to the creation. The first time we hear the idea and concept of rest is God resting on the seventh day.
I got that. Yeah.
After he created, after he worked, after he imagined and spoke into existence and did everything that he did out of his vision for what humanity and creation and the universe and all of that, says that God rests. And it's like, okay. And again, this raises the theological question, does God need rest? Meaning, was he exhausted and tired? It wasn't about that. It wasn't that God, exerted his power and need to recharge because he's now weak. It's not that at all. God was setting a standard, an opportunity for us to both work and rest. And I think that's where those two have to go together. You can't talk about rest without talking about good work. I think there's a lot of work. There's busy work. There's hecticness. That's unhealthy. But there is something about good work. We are wired to work. People always say work is the curse of the fall in the garden. No, it's not. Working was a gift. Working is who God created us to be. The assignment to work, to have dominion, to take care of the garden, to work it, was meant to be. It's a blessing. It's who we are. It's part of created in the image of God. what made the curse was working in a hostile environment and toiling when the soil is not good. That's what made that the curse. The curse isn't working. So when you talk about rest, you have to talk about good work, because I don't think until you do something that you work with that makes you feel like you're accomplishing something good or purposeful, that rest. And I think sometimes people's restlessness is because they're still searching for purpose. They're still searching for working to accomplish something significant.
Agreed.
That's why you're not resting, because you haven't worked with purpose.
But our world, especially among men, our world glorifies busyness.
Oh gosh.
And I think that rest is resistance.
Mm-hmm.
It's reclamation, it's redemption. I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's allowing God to tend to our own fractures and woundedness, if you want to go that way on it. And there's kind of, I think there's scripture to back this up. And it's funny that they actually built a day, biblically, where it was a commandment, the fourth commandment.
The Sabbath, keep the Sabbath holy,
To rest is like he had to tell people, no, sit down. And it wasn't about being lazy, because I do think there's some, I feel this way. There's some men who feel like it's unmanly to rest.
Yes, exactly.
Or lazy.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's times that I will be at home, and if it's on a Saturday or something and I've got some golf on, I don't watch a lot of TV, but I do watch a lot of golf, and I watch baseball and some other stuff. But like it'll be noon, and this is partly because of my dad, because my dad was very he worked his butt off in life. And so I think because I was always seeking approval, I never wanted to appear lazy so there are times now instinctively where I'll be on the couch, and it's not very often I'm on the couch. That's the dog's. The dog has the couch. I don't even get it. But I will be on the couch watching something, and I hear the back door, like my wife gets home, and I instinctively jump up.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be looked at as lazy.
Yep, exactly.
And she says, "What are you doing?" "Nothing. I was just going to wash the windows." I just accomplished a whole bunch that I'll tell you all about when I think of what it was. But it's funny that little example, I think some men go there with that, if they're like me, and I think probably to some degree they are. And I talked about the fourth commandment, but in Revelation, and I started to kind of look through the Bible looking for comments to think, am I crazy, or is rest as neglected and as important as I'm kind of thinking in my mind that it should be? So in Revelations, and by the way, this is a topic for another time. I just finished this 3-week devotional on Revelations. Wow. I was with a community group, life group, a few years ago, and one of the wives said, "Let's do Revelations." And everybody goes, "No." Well, now I know why. Because, and I've obviously skimmed Revelations, but I'd never done a dive into it. Anyway, so I pulled this out of Revelations 14. It says, when talking about those, and this is, again, we could go 10 directions on this, those who have taken the mark of the beast, right hand, forehead, that as part of their punishment, they will have no rest day and night. So we're talking about somebody that has taken the mark of the beast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's their punishment? They don't get any rest.
Yeah.
That shows you the value of rest and the regard that rest was held in. And then a voice from heaven says, "Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds will follow with them." So again, this notion of rest being connected to resistance, and also we're finding in Scripture the value, the obvious value of rest. You mentioned in the beginning too, on the seventh day he rested in Genesis. And, you even think about how it's built into nature. Plants have these periods of dormancy, and
Yep.
I always think of bears hibernating and all these things. It's funny how there's examples of it all over the place.
Seasons when it comes to agriculture where the soil has to rest.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And I don't know how that relates to this, but I think
it is. It's seasons. And God built all that. He built those mechanisms and timings in place. And God built the idea of rest. I think the rest piece, there's physical rest, which is, I could take a day off and do that. But I think the ultimate rest is, when Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and tired, and I will give you rest." And he talks about taking his yoke upon ourselves, and it's not a burden that's heavy, it's light. And he was contrasting that from the religious.
Boy, that's great. I didn't think about that one.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, and he was contrasting. The word yoke there is the idea of when someone was doing agriculture, you would have cattle, and a yoke was this massive wooden beam that was placed on the shoulders, and it was heavy, and it was done to control whether it was an ox or a cow, whatever, a horse that's driving the plow into the soil. And Jesus was contrasting, saying this religion, the religion the Pharisees created, the religion of man, it's a burden on you. It's oppressing you. It's pushing you down. And Jesus was saying, listen, I don't come to you with that. Jesus basically says, I do the heavy lifting in terms of the cross and reconciling us with him. That doesn't mean we don't, the Bible says work out your salvation. It doesn't mean work for my salvation. People misquote that all the time. It doesn't mean earn your salvation. Work out your salvation means I'm living it out. I'm practicing it. I'm putting into practice my faith, my salvation. But so there's a work aspect. There's a living out. But what Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and tired, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. It's light." He was saying this: don't fall into the trappings of religion. And religion says you have to constantly work for your salvation, work for your approval, work for your forgiveness, work for God's love. If you fall into that trapping, it's a yoke of a burden that's on you, because you're constantly every moment going, I got to do this, 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 in fear of, if I don't, God's going to be disappointed with me.
Now, you just described, I think, the chief reason that a lot of men that I know avoid going to church.
That's
or
100%
avoid a relationship.
Absolutely.
I don't want one more thing that's going to be, I'm going to screw up in.
Right, exactly. And if you and I think, believe that we have to earn God's approval, his affection, his love, you will always be restless spiritually. And every religion in the world says, earn your way with God. Therefore, it's a burden upon you. It's a yoke of slavery. It's a bondage thing. It's heavy. It's burdensome. Jesus is like, listen, I give you rest. Come to me. Find your rest in me. And what that means is, doesn't mean we don't work out our salvation. Doesn't mean we live out our faith. It just means I work from God's love. I don't have to work for God's love. One is a place I work from a place of rest. I don't have to work out of a place of restlessness. And I mean, think about that mentally and spiritually. If you wake up every day going, oh my gosh, here's the wrong things I've done. I've got to make sure I constantly keep the balance of good things I do to outweigh that. Otherwise, God's going to be disappointed. God's disapproval, God's love. You're constantly every day going to be carrying a burden that he's not intended for you to carry. You'll never be restful. You'll always be restless.
Especially if you're somebody who's hard on yourself.
Absolutely.
Like I am.
Like a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I have to be perfect. And that's a self-imposed prison of, I got to be the perfect little Jesus follower. I got to be a perfect little Christian. I got to be perfect for God. If I'm not perfect for him, that's what he's talking about. He's not asking us to carry that burden. He wants us to be free from that.
And I have friends I even know who like the idea of all of this. Yeah, I believe, I'm sure. But then they stiff arm it a little bit.
Oh, totally.
And I think the reason is not because, I mean, I know very few people, and I'm not talking about going to church, okay? I know we talk about that a lot. I love going to church. And that's hasn't been that way forever. Mm-hmm. I love my church. Right, I like hearing my brother preach, but I've come to just love going to church. a lot of people can't imagine that, and they value their Sunday morning and making an omelet and coffee and maybe hitting some range balls. I get it. But I do think a lot of that is, as I just mentioned, and I'm even realizing it more as you're talking about it, it's born out of them not wanting to fail at something else, or the fear of having to give up something, commit something that's going to cause them to even have less rest or less peace than they do now.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's the, when you look at the rest in your soul, how do I find rest in my soul? It comes from a place, the Bible uses a word called abide. Now, okay, that sounds like, I don't use that, you're walking down the street, nobody's going to talk about abiding, but Jesus used that.
The dude abides.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, what? What do you mean by that? Like,
it's Big Lebowski.
Yeah. Does he say that?
Big Lebowski. Dude abides.
But it's true. It's a resting word. Abide is a resting word. Because here's what it means. Jesus said, those who abide in me is like a branch that abides in the vine. Well, I was like, what? Okay, I understand. What are you talking about? Well, what does a branch do? A branch just is connected. That's all it does.
I love your take on this. Go.
And the goal of the vine is to provide nourishment to the branch. So what's a branch do? The branch doesn't worry about heat or sun. All the branch has to do is one thing, has one objective. Just take from the vine. Stay connected. Stay connected. Everything you need, the vine is gonna give that to you. So what Jesus was saying is, and he also said, if you love me, you'll put my words into your life, and you'll hear my words. You'll embrace my words. What he was saying is, and I think this is the crux of all resting, true resting in Jesus is rooted in trust. Mm-hmm. Trust is the gateway to rest of the soul. So if I'm not trusting God, I'm trusting in something else. And that creates anxiety. It's misplaced trust. Because if I'm trusting in myself, man, I'm anxious because I know myself. And I know what I'm capable of doing, and I know what I am not capable of doing. And that scares the heck out of me. And so the Bible constantly makes the comparison of those who trust in the Lord. Those are the ones who have peace that passes understanding, a peace that guards your heart. A true kind of restful peace comes from trusting. Trusting is staying connected to the vine. It's believing, God, everything I need is from you. So again, I'm talking about soul rest here, not just physical rest, but when you believe and trust who God is, he's for me, it allows me to truly stop and go, okay. And I find for me a practical way of doing that, because somebody might say, I don't get that. Start every day by actually being thankful for God. God, thank you for this. Thank you for this. Thank you for this. God, I'm focusing my attention on your attributes and your character. Okay, God, this is what I do this every day, and sometimes longer than other days, but I find rest when I do this. I begin to make a list of the things that God has done. God, thank you for this. God, thank you for this thing that you did last time. God, thank you for this answered prayer. God, thank you for this. And gratitude and thankfulness, it takes you into a different realm of peace, because you're focusing now on God's faithfulness. You're focusing on his power. And then start thinking, I make a list. God, thank you for your forgiveness. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your power. I start focusing on his attributes. And when I set my mind on the things of who he is, his character, his nature, how good he is. And that doesn't mean I don't have things in my life. I'm like, I still don't know why he hasn't done this. Still don't know why this prayer isn't answered. That doesn't mean that. I'm not living in denial. What I'm doing is I'm just resetting my mind and my heart on who God is. It's the vine staying connected to the branch staying connected to the vine. And in that moment, it's what the Bible calls abiding. I'm like, okay, God, I'm resting right now because I'm focusing on you and the bigness of who you are, not stressing over the bigness of my problems. And he invites us. The Bible says, when Jesus talked about prayer, he's like, hey, bring in the Lord's Prayer, it's like, ask me for your daily bread. And it's okay, bring the request before him. Bible also says that we can come before the throne of grace, bring anything that we need that's stressing us out, worrying us. And it says in that moment, you'll receive what you need. So resting is the art of receiving.
Yeah.
And we do that through the engagement of trusting. And trusting is activated in us when we set our mind on who God is and his goodness. So that's just, it's a description of a practical way of, and you can do that every morning. You can do that every lunch hour. You can do that every night. And the more that you set time to set your abiding, the more you set time and focus on that, it begins to be like this refreshing that comes over you.
That's a good practical step and a lesson if you can be disciplined. And I try to do that. I don't do it enough. Like I've mentioned before, I have friends who do full-on gratitude journals, and it can be really simple stuff.
Yeah. And I'm not good at journals, but what I can do is just sit there. I'll do it when I'm driving my car. You know, while I'm driving, I'm in traffic. I'm like, okay, all right, right now I'm going to practice setting my mind on God's goodness. And sometimes I'll turn off the radio. I'm like, I don't need more noise right now. Just quiet in the car. Sometimes maybe worship music or just some music, whatever. And I just thank God.
Or the Vertical Pursuit podcast you'll turn on.
Podcast will give you a lot of rest and peace. It's true. But it's just like, oh, okay, God, I'm focused on you. I'm trusting you for my salvation. I don't have to earn it. I'm trusting you for these things that are stressing me out, and just share those with him. So that's a way to find restfulness and peace, even without, cutting into your schedule, although making time for that's important. Yeah, I was thinking here, I was looking at a verse in Hebrews chapter 4. It says this: for anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from his. And then I love this next phrase. It says, let us therefore make every effort to enter his rest. And I'm like, isn't that an oxymoron? Make every effort to enter rest. I think it actually takes effort to rest.
I think the end of that, because I have down, I jotted down a couple today. For who we have believed, enter that rest.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let us therefore strive to enter that rest, so that no one may fall by the same sort of disobedience.
Yeah.
So I like how, and that goes back to us talking about how, and I've done this too, when I talk about worry. Mm-hmm. And I have a friend that I talk about with worry, because we both worry about a lot of things, and we both remind each other that's a sin.
Yeah.
And that you're going against, you're not just disappointing at that point. You're not just not doing what you should, you're sinning.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, because I always thought of rest as a safety measure given by God, even before, because of, you go back to Genesis, even before the fruit was even eaten in the garden, it was built in as a safety measure. But as you go further into it, you start to realize it's the fourth commandment, but it's a commandment.
It is.
Sorry.
It is. It is something you have to do.
Right.
That's why I love the statement. Make every effort.
Which causes me more stress, because I realize I'm violating it all the time.
Now I'm stressed out. Now
one more thing I can't get right. I know.
It's true, though.
I know.
But that's where I think on a practical level, we have to look at our society. So here's another why we don't rest. We don't rest because we're trying to maintain a certain level of lifestyle. Now, okay, let's unpack that for a second. We all have to work to earn money. I get that. That's that. And now with our economy, inflation, the way things cost, here's what's fascinating is now people, this is, I'm going to press into something that I think is one of the secrets to rest that most of us don't really enter into. Resting comes from being content. Now, what I mean by that, Paul said, I've learned the secret. I love that word. I've learned the secret of being content. I've learned whether I have a lot or a little to be content. And then right after that, he says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So again, he's trusting in the strength of Christ. But he says, I've learned to be the secret of being content. Because I understand we all don't just get to retire. We all don't have money that we can just let's go play golf every morning. Let's just chill. Let's sleep in. We got to make money. Most families today with the economy have to have two incomes. So now you've got to pay for that. You got to put kids in school. You've got, extracurricular activities that require a lot of money these days for kids, and grocery bills are going up. You add this up, and it's just this treadmill that we're on. I do think this, though. I understand there's a level where we don't have control to just stop and do nothing. That's not what I'm advocating for. However, I do think there are things that we strive for and exhaust us because we don't know how to be content with less things.
And it's never been harder than it is today with the constant comparison on social media and marketing. And I am guilty, and we've talked about this. I love getting on whatever Instagram, TikTok, and my algorithm is filled with car parts and classic cars and hunting and guns and apparel and shoes, and it's great. It's great, and it adds to the battle that I don't think any generation has fought harder to be content.
Yeah.
And I think about my dad, and there's funny. Do you ever think about something that your dad did really well that you don't, and you're wondering, like, why didn't I get that? Why didn't I see that? My dad was so content, and he was a teacher and a coach, and we were very comfortable, but we didn't have very much. But, my dad had his little aluminum fishing boat, like a little 16-foot boat with a little motor on the back. Had it forever. In fact, it's still in my mom's garage. My dad passed 4 years ago, and I've got to do something with the boat, but that's another story. But I always, and it's all scratched up, and I would say toward the, when we were gone and he was retired, say, Dad, you got enough money to get another boat. And he just goes, I like my boat. I'm like, okay. And then he had this little truck for years, and and always having problems. And I said, Dad, you can get another truck. He said, I like my truck. I mean, just never, he never wanted. And then he has me who, and I'm not terrible about it, but I have a longing for things a lot, and I have a desire for things, not opulent things,
right.
But I wish I were more content like he was.
Yeah.
And very peaceful, very at peace.
And that's the thing is, I think it's hard. It's easier said. That's why Paul said, I've learned the secret of being content. And I think that the way that we get there is we are in a culture and society that constantly bombards us, like you were saying, with social media or just in friendships. Keeping up. You're keeping up. You're keeping up with either others through comparison, or I think we also are trying to keep up with the belief that if I have all this stuff, then
you will be content when you buy the new Kuiu vest.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then so then I got to get that thing, got to get that thing, got to get that thing. And then I'm not resting, or now the money it takes to get those things. So now I got to work to make that kind of money. And it's like, gosh, if I learned the art of simplicity, I learned the art of contentment. I learned the art of going, God, you're my ultimate fulfillment in things in life. And so the less I am satisfied with you, I'll try to be satisfied in other things. I'm looking for meaning and purpose. I'm looking for identity. I'm looking for whatever it is. And so I'm constantly filling time and energy in pursuit of those things, which causes me to be restless. So I think contentment.
In our last episode, not to interrupt you, in our last episode, we talked about your trip to Africa recently. You just got back. Did you see, I mean, because in my mind, was the simplistic society.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're probably happier and peaceful and more at rest.
Yeah, and they work hard, so it's not that. But I do think there's.
And I don't mean to imply unsophisticated either.
Oh, not at all. I do think there's a cultural thing. I think we have idols, in a consumer world, and we are very consumeristic. Consumerism can be an idol where it's if you have, then you will be. If you have, then you will be. If you have, then you'll be. So you have this endlessness. Now, the other thing, too, there's endorphins. And this is where we were talked earlier. I think a lot of us, we are pursuing escapism, not true rest. What's the difference? Escapism is anything I can use to avoid hard things in life. Rest is when I find refreshing in the midst of the hard things of life. So, with escapism, it actually can create busierness, because what I'm doing is I'm getting an endorphin hit from some sort of activity. And so it has a temporary escape mechanism that allows me to handle stress in my life. But the problem is that's going to come crashing in a little bit. It's not truly resting. I'm just filling my time with more things, with more adrenaline, with more endorphins, and I'm not truly resting. And you said something earlier too, I think is really important, is the guilt and shame that comes with rest. Like, why is it that when someone walks home and I feel like I got to get up and prove that I'm, working 100 miles an hour.
Terrible at that.
Oh, there's a shame that goes around rest. I don't want to be labeled lazy. Well, if you've worked, you've earned the right to rest, so you're not lazy. Because now, if you're just sitting around the house 7 days a week not doing anything, that is lazy. If your wife is trying to bring the groceries in and you're not helping, okay, get off your butt and do that. We're not talking about that.
Oh, I'm so dumb the way I do stuff in my head like that, where I feel I do it with sleeping. So my dad, again, modeling after my dad, was a very early riser. Never slept in. What the heck is that? Who would do that? And my dad, he didn't say anything. He just modeled it. But I had a friend in high school who our biggest insult to each other was we would call in the morning, and then the smart aleck remark would be, oh, did I wake you up? No. I've been up and I can tell he's in bed. And it's like at 7:00. So it shouldn't be shameful. But I'm that way now. If I wake up and I see that and I glance at the clock, and if it's anywhere near 7, my feet hit the floor so fast, as if I got to prove something to somebody.
Totally. Exactly.
Like somebody's looking.
Right. That's exactly it.
And I'm shameful.
Yeah.
If it's at 7:05, I'm like, well, were you lazy?
Totally. That's a pride thing too.
Totally. That's all in my own
I don't want
head.
anybody to see that I'm, lazy. And
I've been up for hours.
Yeah.
I was just laying here. I was just resting my eyes.
Yeah. Resting my eyes.
I wasn't sleeping.
I've heard that we've all used that one. The other thing is when we talk about the Sabbath, it's become much more popular now. Lots of books are being written. It's become kind of a new value. And in churches, anyways, talk a lot now about bringing the Sabbath back, and there's a ton of blogs and books and everything written on it right now. One of a dear friend, John Mark Comer, wrote The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. So just as a practical, one of the New York Times bestsellers, if you're looking for a book, it's probably the best book out there on what does it mean to really find rest. And I love the title, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which I think he got from Dallas Willard. But what a great way of saying, how do I ruthlessly eliminate the hurry, which is, I think, what the Hebrews passage is saying is you got to work hard to rest. Okay. That means you got to set up boundaries. That means you've got to be intentional, be content, and say, I'm not going today. I'm going to take a day off once a week, or I'm going to take, a day or two a month, and I'm going to unplug. I'm going to be more content and satisfied.
It takes discipline, though.
And it takes discipline. It absolutely does. I'm going to have to be okay with telling people, hey, on my day off, I'm not going to go we can't do this. I'm going to have to set up boundaries, which means disappointing people. That's the hard work that's involved in doing that. Telling your boss, I can't work on these days. I've already put in whatever. I mean, putting boundaries in, being disciplined with Sabbath, it is work, but it's the kind of work that leads to rest.
Do you think somebody this is a dumb question, but do you think somebody who battles insecurity has a tougher time resting?
Oh, absolutely. Insecure people are the most restless people. And because we're all insecure to some extent, that's the pinpoint of a lot of our restlessness. Because you're trying, what's the opposite of insecurity is security. So in our insecurities, we are anxious to find security, acceptance, well-being, love, whatever it might be. Wherever we're insecure about, our brain is constantly mitigating that to find ways to solve those insecurities or insulate those insecurities. And so that's keeping us active in our brain, and then certainly it can manifest in physical labor as well too, emotionally as well. I think of relationships, how many people are striving to earn favor and to keep relationships. And so we can't say no to people. Mm-hmm. We're a bunch of yes people and people pleasers. That's exhausting. There's no rest in that. When you tell people, hey, listen, I'm taking a day, I need a Sabbath day, People are going to get their feelings hurt because you're saying no to them, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. Or if you get your identity out of pleasing people, it's not them, it's you, actually. They're fine if you said, I can't. You can't let yourself say no to them. They're okay with it. If you tell people, hey, I'm going to take a day and just rest, sure, some people might be disappointed. You got to manage that. Some people are totally fine with that. You're not fine with that. You're feeling like, oh, I'm letting them down, and what are they going to think of? Okay, now you're back to your insecurities, and you're on that treadmill of trying to mitigate that insecurity by the security of relationships that you need to feel in control of. And so you constantly got to feel of pleasing people with the illusion that you can control them being in your life. And that's how you're managing the insecurity or the fear of losing relationships. So again, it takes discipline to set up those boundaries. And I was thinking too, I wrote down on here, this is funny, I wrote down 7 unique types of rest. Just to get practical.
Yeah.
Let me just buzz through these real quick.
Totally.
These are different ways, because if you're like looking for practical ways of resting, again, it's going to require margin and time, but it can look like not just a daily Sabbath. So I wrote these, I'll just speed through these kind of quick. I wrote down creative rest. What is creative rest? Well, you talked about this earlier with Jack's car. When you put his car in the garage and you turn on some George Strait, turn on the neon lights.
Yeah.
Yes, you were working, but there's a part of that can be restful.
And I got really pissed a few times.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. And you got the scars
Under
in
his
your hand
car,
to show
and
it.
I, pop a valve, and all of a sudden I get coolant in my eye, and
Yeah. But I know people who will.
But it was fun.
Well, but I also know you were extremely creative, very creative. I mean, I have great thing. I'm looking over at my Gladiator helmet over there of how creative.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, because that's going in my office, and I got a spot for it. But I'm like looking at that, going, how sick is that? And I got another piece in my office that you took old busted license plates and shaped it into a Sims fishing logo. And I love putting these in my office because I get to show them off when people come in there and talk.
You
about
do
it.
know that not everything I make you have to hang up, right?
Oh no, I know that.
If it ends up
But
in the rummage sale, I'm totally fine.
I'm telling you, but I have a whole nother strategy on this, but I love putting those things in my office because it's a great conversation breaker, icebreaker. My point in this is that sometimes for me, a creative outlet or someone like, I just want to sit someday and like, I'll come tinker in the garage. That's restful for me.
Me too.
That's restful. It's like, I'm in here, I'm just tinkering around. I'm like, my creativeness can be recharging and refreshing when it's not demanding. Creativity under demand is not restful, but creativity just for sake of being who we are, God created us in his image. Someone who likes to paint, as an example, like that can be restful because you're disengaging from everything else. You're tuning it all out. And so there could be creative rest. Number 2 is spiritual rest. I mentioned that earlier. Spiritual rest is the most important one, where we find rest by trusting in God. The promises that are there. I love what a couple verses, Isaiah says this: you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. Philippians says this: don't be anxious about everything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God will guard your heart. So again, thanksgiving and trusting God. So that's spiritual rest. Here's another one: sensory rest. Sensory rest. What would it look like to take a day and go, no screens, no phone, other than maybe, okay, I got to answer it because, or a text because my family, I get that, but I'm not looking on any Instagram or YouTube. I'm like, all that stuff is tuned out. No TV. Just
kids have such a tough time with that.
Oh gosh.
'Cause my son will say, oh man, I slept terrible last night. Well, what'd you do when you went to, I played Call of Duty till 1 a.m.
Exactly.
Like you had people trying to kill you on a video game till 1 a.m. Then you shut it off and tried to go to sleep.
I know. And I do the same thing. I wake up at 3 o'clock. What do? I grab my phone and I'm just scrolling because I can't sleep. Well, that's making it worse.
I know.
Not helping. and so sensory rest is just tuning those things out. Physical rest, of course. What does that look like? Take a day where you're not running on the treadmill. Now, you can go out for a run. I'm not saying you can't exercise, but you're not out running in the hustle and bustle. You're not caught up in traffic. You're not running to work. You're running errands. You're just physical rest. Now, here's one too: social rest. Now, this is even. I'm an extrovert. and I know you're an extrovert, but you also have a lot of introvert too.
I do.
And what people misunderstand us extroverts, because I get recharged when I'm by myself. And I get, I'm
more probably introverted than you know.
Yes. And so for you, what does that look like as an introverted I mean, you've got great extrovert, but your introversion.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about when you were, another word that I was you talked about coming out and tinkering in the garage, be it taking a gun out and cleaning it that doesn't need cleaning.
Yep.
Some of that to me
Yeah.
is about control.
It is.
And a safe space.
Yeah, totally.
Where I have control of my environment
it.
and it's just me and I'm alone and nobody, and not that I don't want to be asked for things because I love to do things for people, but it's like at times, rest sometimes, and sometimes late at night if I can't sleep, I'll even, and if it's warm in the summer, I'll go down in the garage and tinker with something that doesn't make a lot of noise. But I think for me, and it's not, I don't like to admit that because I think it sounds kind of weak, but when I know that I can control my environment and that it's very, very safe and that it's my stuff, that gives me peace.
You know, it's funny you say it because I think you and I talked about this, is that people ask me, they go, why do you like to tinker in the garage? And I go, because it's an environment, I don't have a million opinions. And I'm in control. It's like, I don't need, I think oftentimes in our jobs, certainly in ministry, you've got a million opinions on what you should or shouldn't be doing. And there's no rest in those voices. And so sometimes just going in the garage, or for me, going for a drive, going out on the water, getting out in creation, getting out in nature. I don't need to be around a million voices. I actually need to tune out those voices.
We've talked so much about old cars and vintage cars and taking a drive in your 72 truck just out on the farmland and just kind of driving with the old window down, the smell of fuel and just the putter, that's rest.
Oh, it is rest. I did it yesterday.
Oh man.
Total rest.
So good.
But that's that's the social rest. I think people have to be okay going, I'm tuning out voices and opinions, and I'm just going to try to get quiet, whether you're introvert, extrovert. I'm going to do that. I think another rest is mental rest, and that's giving you permission to not have to think so hard. That's for some of us hard to turn off, but stop reading the news. In fact, don't read a book. Or maybe that's your distraction, is reading a book that's lighthearted or easy, where you don't have to sit there and do deep philosophy or theology around. You're kind of like, I'm just reading a story, or I'm reading something that's a magazine about an interest, a hobby or something. But you have to give your brain an opportunity to rest. And I think that we're so overstimulated with information coming at us nonstop that you have to turn those things off to give your brain a chance. And so, fill your brain with something that's less intense, whatever it is. But I think those are some practical ways that we can find rest.
They're good. And I hope that some of this stuff helps. And I wanted to talk about this because I suffer from it.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I really do. Yeah. And you're far busier than I am. And I was going to say a minute ago, interrupt you as you were ticking these things off. I know you have a hard time saying no. I do too. Mm-hmm. But there are days when I can't get a hold of you, and I drive by the church and there's your truck, and then it was there at 7 a.m., but it was also there at 7 p.m., and you had 16 meetings. And I'm like, dude, you got to, and I know you can't. I know to some degree you have to say yes, but I worry about you with rest. But I do think for as busy as you are, incredibly busy, you do have good peace about you and good rest, at least from what I read, and I know you pretty well. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, I love the idea of what does it mean to recharge? And I think that I've had to be intentional about things for me to recharge with. And again, I'll say this, seasons, we all understand seasons, where you go a month to 3 or 4 months where you're like, okay, in this season, things are busier. Maybe because basketball season or a kid's sports season. I go, okay, right now, things are a little bit busier because I get off work and then I'm running to my kid's game or I got to run to this. That's fine. It's when seasons become norms that's where you go, okay, how long? Oh, it's been 2 years. It's been 3 years. When's the last time that you were able to kind of relook at your calendar and schedule and realign some of that kind of stuff? So I think that's the way of managing that. But, for me, on a practical level, if you can find, this is what we try to encourage our staff, find at least half a day, if not a full day every week to do your Sabbath. And that could look different. Again, that could be creative rest, that could be physical rest, emotional rest, social rest, sensory rest, whatever. And then I was always encouraged to find a day a month where you can just, and for me, it's the little things. I find recharging in the little things. My time with God and His Word and prayer, go for a drive, get in the garage where I tune everything out, and I'll just me and the Lord. If I have that baked into a weekly rhythm, man, that's restful for me.
Takes discipline.
Yeah.
It really does. And let's for a lot of the guys that I know who listen to this, let's do this together. Mm-hmm. Let's work on this together, because I know what's coming outwardly in our world, and certainly in our country, is more opportunity to not be restful.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it in my friends, and I don't want to see it in myself. But it is a massive challenge. In fact, I think it's the reason we spend an hour on it is I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we face.
Totally.
Is rest and peace, and it's been robbed from us.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to the point when we can rediscover it, because I think we're stronger when we have that good balance of rest and peace in our lives.
Absolutely.
That not many of us have.
Yep.
We appreciate you listening to Vertical Pursuit. Hopefully it doesn't stress you out even more. Hopefully it is restful and you can kind of tune some things out. And we hope you continue to follow along with us. And once again, follow us on Spotify and iTunes, and check out the Vertical Pursuit app. And we will see you next time. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast, comment, or message us, and check out our website at verticalpursuit.org. Download the VP app and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.